Check 1, 2.
Go! Curious about real estate? Yes! Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need. Get over the fear and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello everybody, Michael Quarles with the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Today we have a very unique podcast episode. And it may be boring for some of you. I hope not. I'm going to try to make it as fun as I can, but this is going to be a learning experience for a lot of folks. I have taken a seller call from one of my coaching students, and I've cut it up. The original call was like 10 minutes and 30 seconds long. I've cut it up and I've spoken about it within the call. So they speak for a few seconds, I'm going to speak for a few seconds kind of thing. And I'm going to take you down a path of how to have this call better. Now, it's not a bad call. I'm not saying it is a horrible call. We can always do it better. And so I'm going to have you listen. I'm going to jump in and explain what I would do differently. And I just hope you take away from this to be able to communicate and buy houses better and more. So here we go. Podcast 210, real seller call that I'm going to critique. Here we go.
Hello.
Hello, this is Riley with iBuy Houses. I'm calling for Susan.
Speaking.
Is this a good time?
Yes.
Okay. I'm returning your call regarding wanting to sell a house. Do you have a house you were hoping to sell?
Well, I'm looking to see possibly. I own two houses in Florida. One in the Jockey Club and Northport. And then the other one also in Northport on Richmond Terrace.
So in a situation where you have multiple properties, we always want to take them down to a single property. So here she stated she had two properties she wanted to sell. I would jump in and say, you have two properties you're hoping to sell? Well, fantastic. Let's talk about the one you want to sell first. She may come back and say, no, but I want to sell them both. And so I'd say, you want to sell them both? Terrific. Which one do you want to sell first? And when we buy that one, then we'll start talking about the second one we're going to buy. Which one would you like to talk about first? Because we want to separate them because we don't want to get confused. And you're going to hear a little bit later that the seller does get confused about which properties they're talking about. Another thing, the pace from the investor on this call is extremely fast. And he's speaking to somebody who has a very slow pace. When you speak to someone and you're outpacing them, it's harder for them to hear you because the reason they're speaking slow is because that's how their mind works. And we have to slow down our tonality and our pace so that they can listen to us. Let's go again.
Okay, that's great. Are either of the properties currently listed with a real estate professional?
No.
No? Okay, terrific.
Right now, I'm just trying to get an idea of what you're going to offer me.
Okay.
So let's talk about what he didn't do. Earlier, she indicated that she possibly had some houses for sale. When we have a seller that says possibly they have a home for sale, we really need to come back to them and say, let me understand. Do you have a home that you're hoping to sell, or do you have a home you're thinking about selling? If they're just thinking about selling, we need to let them know to call us back when they're 100% ready to go. Not talk to them until they're 100% motivated and ready to go. The other thing is, and you can start counting them if you'd like, but I believe there's 39 okays and that he uses as follow-up answers in a positive manner. And what he's doing is, which is good, we need to use positive and negative reinforcements, but using okay over and over and over and over and over and over and over again is really, really annoying to the person who's listening. So try not to use okay. It happens to be what I call a weak word. So it's his weak word. Everybody has one. A lot of people say So and okay is a weak word as well. So you got to be very conscientious of that.
So at the moment, are you looking at one house, or are you looking at possibly selling both homes?
I would like to sell both. My husband passed away 2 years ago, so
I'm sorry to hear that.
One of the hardest things for us to not do is say sorry. But we really can't say sorry. And the reason for it is we don't know the situation, whether that was a situation that was positive for her or negative for her. We assume that it's a negative thing, but in some cases it could be a positive thing. And then the reality is unless these people are family and friends, and you would already know this if they were, you can't have you don't have skin in the game, so you can't be sorry. So it's just a word. So let's not even acknowledge it, and let's fall forward.
it's just a lot for me to take care of right now.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm thinking about selling them.
Okay.
When someone tells us it's a lot of work and it's hard for us to take care of them, we've got to come back and acknowledge that they're giving us the reasons, and we need to let them know that we heard them. And so you would basically just say, the reason you're selling is it's a lot of work and it's hard to manage them. I completely understand. The nice thing about my program, when you sell me your house today, and then just go into a little conversation, let them know that you heard them, and emphasize every time that the seller tells us they're in pain, let them know that we heard that pain, and fall forward. Here we go.
What do you think? Let's go with the first one that you called me on. What do you think that house is worth in today's market, in your opinion?
So the correct question is, what do you think the home would be worth in today's market if I sent out an appraiser to do a professional appraisal? What do you think they'd appraise your property for? And the reason we want to ask the question that way is we want a third person scapegoat, as we may need that person in the future if in fact the property isn't worth what they said it was worth, rather than going back to the seller and arguing with them and saying, well, you said it was worth X. I contracted it based upon that value. And getting into that argument, now I can go back to the seller and say, it appears as though the appraiser, the original appraiser that you were thinking about, is wrong. And it's easier for the seller to accept that basis for being wrong over me saying that they're wrong with the number. So always blame it, or always add in what would a real estate appraiser appraise it for.
In my opinion,
Yes, ma'am.
about, and I haven't been down there in a while.
What's a while?
Oh gosh, probably 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
So in a case like this, when the seller is telling us that they haven't seen or been to the property in 5 or 6 years, the wow was okay, but it wasn't as great as it could be. Because I'd want to come back to the seller and I'd say, oh my goodness, you haven't been to the house in 5 or 6 years? Really? Oh my. That's okay. It doesn't matter, because it seems like this house is the perfect house for me. So I'm going to emphasize that it's a bad thing, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to take the pain away. Don't worry about it. But we've got to use the tools that they give us to use when we communicate with them. We have to let them know we're listening. We have to follow up with what they say with a positive or a negative, some tonality change, so they can hear you and be comfortable with you and understand that you're leading them down the path of selling their house to you.
That's a pretty long time.
I've had excellent tenants. I've had the one at 6625 Electra. Her and her husband have been in there for almost 10 years now.
Okay.
And then the one at 5050, probably 5 years now. So they've been longtime tenants, excellent tenants.
What the seller's doing in this with this statement of saying how great it is, how great it is, how great it is they're trying to justify to the investor why the investor should buy it. Let's face it, if it was so great, they wouldn't be selling it. But this is her way of trying to convince this buyer to buy. When you hear this statement or these statements, understand that you have a highly motivated seller, because a low motivated seller doesn't try to convince you to buy. But this person is actually trying to convince you to buy. So when you hear this, say, I understand. So you haven't been there in a while and your tenants are excellent? Really? So it's not a positive word. It's not a super negative word. It's just confirming what they said. I'm just going to soak it in. I'm going to let them know I heard it and move on.
So I'm just trying to get an idea of, of what you would offer for something like that.
So on the 6625, any idea on what you think?
My personal feeling is about 150.
Okay.
You tell me if I'm way off. I don't know.
Well,
so here we have two things. She goes back to she's just trying to get an idea of what he would offer. And that's really stating to him, kind of reverse of the last statement where she was highly motivated. Now she's saying, well, I'm not really motivated. I just want an idea. I would have nipped this one way in the beginning and confirmed so she couldn't bring it up again, whether or not she was motivated to sell and had a house she was hoping to sell. And then when she says, I'm not really sure, I could be way off. Please, 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 please understand. When a seller says I could be way off, you repeat after them so you can be way off. Yes, you can. Absolutely. It happens all the time. A lot of people are way off on what their values are. Agree with her. She wants you to agree with her. She's giving you ammunition to agree. So agree. It's a good thing to agree with people.
You, as the potential seller, knows everything about your house, and I just want to be certain that you understand that number. So I don't know anything about your house at the moment.
Okay.
As far as the 50-50, I think that's what you said, correct? 50-50, that's 5050 address?
No, I was talking about the 6625 in Electra.
Correct, I got that info, but as far as the second place.
Oh, 50-50, that's on Richmond Terrace, also in Northport.
Richmond, Richmond Terrace?
Cool. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what do you feel the value of that property is?
I
currently?
feel that one is currently around 2.
We never want to tell a seller that they're the potential seller, because that leaves room for them not to be the seller. So I would have said, well, I know you're the owner of the property and I'm the buyer, and I know you want to sell me the house, and I know you know more about your property than I do at the moment. However, when you sell me your house today, and use that kind of a dialogue, but don't ever use, well, you're the potential seller, because that means they're also potentially not the seller. And we wouldn't want to give that emotion to them, and you can almost hear it in her voice in her follow-up. The other thing is, did you hear they started becoming confused on the two properties and which one was which? That is why we separate the property, so we talk about one property at a time. The other thing I'm going to talk about, which was at the end of this one, I'll talk about on the next segment. Here we go.
And I haven't had them looked by a realtor or anything like that. That's just my opinion.
Okay, I understand. And thank you for answering that question.
Sure.
What amount?
I love the thank you for answering that question. I thought that was great. And she actually liked it too. A couple things here. We have to acknowledge the value to people. What they say, we have to acknowledge it. So she said around 2. That's not. I don't know if that's $200, $2, 200,000, 2 million, but around two. So I'd want to say. So what you're saying is you believe the value to be around two. Really? Now is that $2, $200, $200,000? What does the two represent? She'll get a, you'll get a chuckle out of it. She'll get a chuckle out of it. That's fine. But we need to know what that means, because we can't assume that we know what that means, because let's face it, we just don't. We can't. The other thing in this is she used the word realtor, and realtor is spelled R-E-A-L-T-O-R. A lot of people put an I between the L and the T, so they say realtor, which is what she said. So she used the word, well, I haven't had a realtor out. And if that happens, that slang, that is her way of saying it, you want to mimic that. You want to match that. So if she says realtor, then say realtor, even though you know it's wrong. Use their slang.
Well, Susan, let me tell you a little bit about what I do. I buy houses like yours all the time.
Mhm.
I pay all the closing costs, things like real estate commissions, title insurance, escrow fees, tax, termite clearance, roof certifications, the list goes on and on. Okay?
Mhm.
And I buy them in an as-is condition.
Mhm.
So I'm going to assume the responsibility for all the needed repairs, whether I've seen them already or not.
Mhm.
So one of the positive factors about you selling your house to me is that you can stay in it if you needed to, or the tenants.
There were two issues in this little snippet of the conversation. One, you could tell he was reading, and when you read, you have a tendency of reading faster. So you speak faster than you normally would speak. So his pace was normally outpacing her, and now it's really outpacing her. And then you've got to be really conscientious that when you read something, you have to read it and speak it slow enough that if you read something and it doesn't apply, don't trap yourself in a conversation like he did when he talked about she can stay in the house as long as she needs to. Well, she's not in the house. It's a tenant-occupied house. And then he tried to work himself out of that with this next statement.
Which I'm assuming if you were to sell, you would let them know, or is there going to be some conflict there?
I don't think there would be. I mean, as long as whoever bought them didn't gouge them on rent or anything like that, I think they would be okay.
Okay. Well, the good thing about what I do is that they can typically, if you were living in it, I would normally tell a seller that you could stay in it as long as possible. But since you have tenants, it's a little bit different scenario at this point. I will pay cash when I buy your home, so you can have peace of mind knowing that it's sold, but not only sold to someone who can actually afford to buy it. So
Mm-hmm.
believe me, typically there's nothing more frustrating than seeing a deal break down in escrow, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to happen. And isn't that really what you want if it were to happen?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So knowing how I'll buy your house, what were you hoping to sell the 6625 address home for? And that's the net amount that you'd want to walk away with after the loans, costs, and everything's taken care of, what we typically call the walk-away money.
Well, I mean...
So she actually said whoever bought the house. The reason she said that is because he hasn't given her any indication yet that he is the buyer. And we have to do this at least 8 times in our conversation. And we do it with little statements like, when I buy your house today, when you sell me your house today, when we agree on a price, when we create a win-win situation, you can consider your house sold. Not only sold to somebody who can afford to buy it. And then he used the word typically. We've got to stay away from those words that could mean something else could happen as well. So we want to be a little bit more matter of fact with our dialogue, and stay away from those words again. And you can see how in the way he was fighting himself out of having to dig himself out of just her not living there, um, that it just got really confusing for everybody. So be very conscientious of that. The other thing is when we have a seller that has a property that's tenant occupied, it's a real simple question. Do you plan on having the tenants out prior to sell, or were you planning on keeping the tenants in when you sold it? And either one is fine with me. I can go either way. I now know what I have to mitigate if it's going to be an occupied property. Or if it's going to be vacant, I know what I have to mitigate. So we just need to ask that. And asking it the wrong way can get you in trouble.
Obviously, I'd like to walk away with the best I can. I don't know. You're kind of putting me on the spot here. I don't know. I have a line of credit against that house.
Okay.
So, I both of them, I would definitely have to have enough to cover that. Plus, I'm on a fixed income. I'm getting rental income now from those properties.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of my income since my husband passed away.
Okay.
So,
if I may ask, did I hear correctly that you said both properties have lines of credit, which means they have a second mortgage on them, or is that a...
When a seller says that they're being put on the spot, we've got to acknowledge that. And we kind of acknowledge it this way. So I'm putting you on the spot. I appreciate how tough this is for you. But here's what's going to happen by the time we're done. I'm going to buy your house. So I have to ask you some really serious questions. I know they're difficult at times. But it's almost over. We're almost done. And what's cool about it is when we're done today, you can have the peace of mind knowing your home sold. That's really what you want, right? And she's going to say, of course. And then we're going to fall forward and continue with our question. The other thing that he did here towards the end of the snippet was he jumped back into the conversation and didn't wait for her price. Sometimes silence on the investor side is extremely powerful, and in a case like this it would have been, but he jumped back in. We got to stay away long enough for them to answer our questions, guys. Here we go again.
They were paid off, and then you took out a line of credit.
Yeah, right. They were both paid off, and
they were both
took a line of credit. Yes.
Okay. So at
and
the moment,
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the one at 50/50. My son borrowed the money against that so he could buy some property here in Connecticut, and obviously he's not in a position to pay that off. So that needs to be paid. I need enough money out of there to get that paid off, and both of them.
Okay.
And then, like I said, some money for me to live on.
This is where it starts getting kind of juicy. And she is absolutely a seller finance transaction. She has absolutely uncovered her motivation in that snippet or that little segment. But she also let us know she has a credit line. Some of that credit line her son used to buy another piece of property. I would have stepped in and said, so let me understand the credit line issue. Is that a secured credit line or an unsecured credit line? Because that's going to make a powerful difference. Because if it's a secured credit line, so it's collateralized, the property is collateral for it, then I can't really go into the statements of, well, if your son started making the payment on a monthly basis, would that help you? I don't mind speaking to your son, kind of thing. But if it's a secured and it's collateralized, and the property's collateralized to secure that loan, it's going to be a harder conversation. I'm still going to ask if she thought it was possible to collateralize his property with his portion of that loan. I'm still going to ask if she thought it was fair to see if he could start paying her a monthly payment on that loan. I'm going to look for options. But she absolutely opened the door to seller financing. So we have to, at this conversation, we have to say, So let me ask you, here's what I'm hearing you say, that you like the rental. You haven't been there in 6 or 7 or 8, 9, 10 years. The tenants that have been there for that long haven't complained about anything. You enjoy getting the rent. Apparently that's what you need on a monthly basis. If I could show you a way that you could have what you have now but without the responsibility of the property, that would be a benefit to you, correct? Of course they're going to say yes. But and I'm not saying I'm going to introduce anything else right now about seller financing. I'm just going to let her know that there's all kinds of different ways for me to buy the house, because she's asking me to tell her this.
Okay. So, I mean, if you want, ideally, if perfect scenario, how much were you thinking you'd walk away? Let's just say from the 6625 address. And I'm sorry, I know it's a hard question to answer because
I
weren't
know
prepared, but just throw out a number, whatever you feel, and obviously based on some other things. So.
I'd say 120.
Okay, so 120K.
All right, a couple things. Don't ask your seller to throw out a number, please. This is serious. It's not a game. We're not just throwing ball here. We're not playing catch. I need the seller to step up, be motivated, give me their number. And don't tell them it's a hard question. It may be a hard question for both of you, but it's a question that must be answered, and you have to stay in control. We just can't. We can't let them off the hook so easily by almost like pretend selling. No, I'm not pretend buying. I'm really am buying. And when someone gives you a price, here's what I want you to do. Not out loud, but I'm going to do it out loud. So I'm going to role play with myself a little bit. What were you hoping to walk away with at the end of the day after we were responsible and took care of the mortgages? What amount of money would you like to put in your pocket? What we call the walkaway money. And they give you an answer. Say it's $200,000. 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, 1,004, 1,005, 1,006, 1,007, 1,008. We were hoping to walk away with $200,000. Wow. Ouch. Oh my. Wow. We gotta get some silence in there. A lot of times you're going to hear someone say, "Are you still there?" And to that I'm going to say, "I am. Just thinking about that number. $200,000. Really? Oh my goodness." So we can use our voice to describe to the seller how we feel. But the words are important too. Because I could say, "Oh, $200,000? Oh, cool." That's different than $200,000. Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, one's just going to be nice and nicey nice, and the other one's not so nicey nice. But let's have some 8 seconds of silence. The other thing, and I'm going to play it again, just a little bit of snippet for you. She described her price one way. He described her price another way. We've got to be really conscientious that we describe them the same way. And so if someone says 200,000, we have to say 200,000, not 200K. So here's that itty bitty snippet so you can catch it. Here it is.
Based on some other things. So.
I'd say 120.
Okay, so 120K.
Did you hear what I meant? He added the letter K. She's just at 120. So we've got to repeat what they say, especially when it comes to numbers, and get clarity on those numbers.
And then on the 50-50, can you tell me about that one? As far as what you think you would like to walk away with there? Or what you feel?
That one, 175 at least. More if possible, but that's,
Okay.
and
So
again, that's my income right now.
yes, I understand.
Did you hear his okay? He actually said, after she named her price, okay. We've got to be conscientious of not using an agreeing word right after they give us a price. We have to make sure we don't say okay. And again, she brings up income seller financing. This is an easy seller finance transaction conversion. Easy, easy, easy. When you hear this, just know this is her income. Let's replace her income. Let's do a deal. And just know, and she would be so comfortable doing a deal here.
All right. So back to 6625. You're saying
Mhm.
you have tenants in there. Tenants in there. I'm sorry. They've been in there for roughly 10 years. You're collecting
Mhm.
rent on them. They're great tenants. Um, it,
Absolutely.
yeah. And you're looking to walk away with about $120,000 on that particular property, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that the least you'll take as far as walkaway money for that property?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Okay. Can't see yourself doing any better than that?
I I really can't. Um, I'm in a tough situation here.
Okay.
That's
A couple things here that bothered me. One, we never asked if that walkaway money included or didn't include the payoff. Didn't ask for a balance of the payoff. We don't know if she wants 120 plus that or 120 with that. And that's pretty important to know. We got to know that stuff. We absolutely have to know that stuff. And then he started going for his price reductions, which I every time you need to go for price reductions, but we have to justify that question. So if I ask, is that the least you'll take, right after I ask the price for the walkaway money, it's going to what happened is going to happen again. She's going to say yes. So let's give her some justification. So let me tell you a little bit more about my program. We buy all the costs, all the realtor fees, commissions, title insurance, transfer tax, and we buy them in as is. So there won't be any needed repairs on your behalf. We won't have to modernize it. Won't have to do any of those things. So knowing that we buy and we pay all those costs, how much less than the 120 walkaway money or the 120,000 walkaway money or whatever she said can you see her selling your house for? So I'm going to justify it why I'm asking for a price reduction. And I'm going to ask her 3 times, 3 different ways. And every time, if she stays firm 3 times, I know that's her firm price. But every time she changes her price, I'm going to ask her again until after 3 times she's stayed at a price. But we have to justify our questions to them, or it becomes really annoying to the seller.
Okay.
if my husband was alive, it'd be a different story. But
No, I understand. Let me do this. If you would give me some time, I need to do some research on both these properties. And if I may, is it okay if I call you back in a few days?
Yes, absolutely. Now, you're not going to be going to the houses. I mean, a drive by. I don't care.
I'm
You're
not going.
just
No,
not
I
going
do
to be
not.
knocking on
It's
the
against
door.
the law to go. No, I'm sorry. It's against the law for me to go on the private property, especially tenant occupied property.
Okay.
So I will not be. No, I will not do that. I live within the area, but I will not do that. So rest assured.
Okay, because obviously, I don't want my tenants to find out.
Yes, I understand.
Unless it's through me.
Correct. Okay, so I appreciate you letting me call you back, and let me do some homework on my end, and I will be back in touch with you.
Okay, and what was your name, please?
My name is Riley. I'm with iBuy
Riley?
Houses. Yes.
Okay.
And if you know of anybody else that has properties here in Florida, please pass on my information to them. That was on my card. And I will
Okay.
be calling you back in a few days as well.
Okay, very good, Riley. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
When we set an appointment to call someone back or contact them back, let's set the appointment for a time specific, a day specific. Would tomorrow at 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock be better for me to call you back to buy your house? Would Thursday at 2 o'clock or 10 o'clock be better for me to call you back to buy your house? I'm not going to leave it up in the air at all. We have to make confirmed, specific, wait by your phone, I will be calling you appointments. That's because if you don't, she's just going to call someone else because you haven't given her any indication that you've solved her problem. And until you have, she's just going to keep calling and dialing for dollars. That's her job. Our job is to let her know that she sold her house to us. And don't bring up things that are legal or illegal. It's not even some things we should just never talk about. And that's one of those things. Just don't ever talk about it. And then she also brought up that she was a little bit afraid that he would be notifying her tenants or noticing her tenants somehow. And to that, that's Mr. or Mrs. Seller. That's one of the nice things about my program is I'm going to buy them in as is condition. I'm vacant, occupied. Not going to ask you to do anything. I'm absolutely not going to bother the tenants. I respect you. And you can consider your house sold. Not only sold, somebody can afford to buy it. You just set them at ease. Let them know what to expect. Set that appointment. Buy a house. I hope this helped some of you understand how complex doing the script correctly is. Now, there's only 4 questions here. Only 4. Did you have a house you were hoping to sell? Is it listed with a real estate professional? What do you think an appraiser would appraise the house for in today's market if I sent them out to do a professional appraisal? What would they appraise it for? And what do you want for your walkaway money? There's only 4 questions in this 36 minutes so far. But it's crucial that we speak and ask the right things. So speak the right way, say the right things, ask the right questions. Acknowledge, there's a power exchange. We're going to control the conversation. But it's real important that we do this correctly. This deal didn't turn into a deal because it was done wrong. And man, I just feel bad for both of them because, I have a seller here that wants to sell and I have a buyer that wants to buy. They just can't communicate. They're talking 2 different languages. Let's talk the same language. Let's speak the same language. Let's buy a house. Solve a problem. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.